February 20th, 1943, was a day etched into the memory of Lieutenant Jimmy Collins, an aviator hailing from Iowa, as he found himself soaring above the war-torn expanse of Guadalcanal. His P-40 Warhawk, a formidable machine of war, was positioned precisely 200 yards behind a Japanese Oscar fighter. Collins' reflector sight, an aiming apparatus that had seen decades of use by hunters and marksmen, projected a luminous, unadorned dot onto his windscreen. With meticulous precision, Collins centered this glowing beacon directly onto the enemy aircraft fuselage and initiated a burst of fire. To his utter dismay, his .50 caliber projectiles, despite their lethal potential, harmlessly streaked past the Oscar's tail assembly, missing their intended mark, by a significant margin of 30 feet. The Japanese pilot, sensing an unseen threat, executed an abrupt, sharp bank, disappearing into the vastness of the sky. Unbeknownst to Collins in that moment of intense aerial combat, he was grappling with a profound physics conundrum while hurtling through the air at an astonishing 200 miles per hour. In the fleeting half-second it took for his bullets to traverse those 200 yards, the Oscar, a nimble adversary, had already shifted its position, a staggering 180 feet sideways. By the early months of 1943, a disheartening reality had settled upon the American forces. A mere 5% of their fighter pilots had managed to achieve even a single confirmed aerial victory. Their aiming strategy was fundamentally flawed. They were targeting where the enemy aircraft was at that instant, rather than anticipating where it would be when their rounds finally arrived. However, a revolutionary development was on the horizon, far across the sprawling Pacific theater. Major Dick Bong, a name that would soon become synonymous with aerial prowess, was preparing to rigorously test a ground-breaking innovation, a sophisticated mechanical brain. This ingenious device possessed the astonishing capability to compute 60 intricate equations every single second, all while the pilot endured the immense physical strain of pulling 4 Gs during the maelstrom of combat. The paradigm of aerial gunnery was about to undergo a radical transformation. Instead of directly aiming at the visible enemy aircraft, pilots would now direct their fire towards an empty expanse of sky, at ghosts that had yet to materialize. The intricate mathematical calculations, once an insurmountable human challenge, would be meticulously handled by this machine, and those ethereal ghosts would, in a terrifying display of precision, become devastatingly real. The oppressive, humid embrace of Guadalcanal's tropical climate clung to Lieutenant Jimmy Collins' flight suit as he ascended into the cockpit of his P-40 Warhawk on that fateful February morning in 1943. At the youthful age of 23, this farm boy from Iowa had already dedicated 8 grueling months to the Pacific Theater, engaging in countless combat missions over the Solomon Islands. It was a brutal campaign where American forces were painstakingly grinding down the entrenched Japanese defenders, turning Coral into a battleground of attrition. Collins possessed all the quintessential attributes of a fighter pilot: unwavering nerves, lightning-fast reflexes, and a deep-seated mechanical aptitude honed by years of repairing tractors since the tender age of 14. What he conspicuously lacked, however, was a single confirmed kill to his name. The squadron briefing preceding his mission had been a matter of routine. Intelligence reports indicated an imminent arrival of Japanese bombers over Henderson Field around the noon hour anticipated to be heavily escorted by Oscar fighters dispatched from Rabaul. Collins' designated role was to fly as wingman to Captain Martinez, maintaining a tight, disciplined formation on his leader as wing, while the more seasoned pilots took the critical shots. It was a subordinate role that Collins had grown increasingly weary of. Observing other men secure victories while he diligently flew formation, his primary objective simply to survive. Yet this particular day carried a distinct, palpable difference. Martinez had been unexpectedly grounded due to a bout of dysentery, thrusting Collins into the leadership position of his own element for the very first time. Two rookie pilots, freshly graduated from flight school, would now follow his lead, placing their nascent combat careers and their very lives in his hands as they embarked on their inaugural combat mission. The substantial weight of this newfound responsibility settled upon Collins. He shoulders with the familiar oppressive burden of a seasoned veteran as he meticulously executed his pre-flight checks. He confirmed the oil pressure was steady, the fuel tanks brimmed to capacity, and the formidable array of guns loaded with 400 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition per barrel. The N9 reflector sight, an unassuming device mounted on his instrument panel, presented a deceptively simple appearance, merely a piece of angled glass designed to project a glowing orange dot onto his windscreen. Army gunnery instructors had relentlessly drilled the fundamental principles into every pilot. Center the luminous dot on your target. Close the distance until you could discern the aircraft's rivets. And then, with unwavering resolve, squeeze the trigger. It was a principle as old as warfare itself, mirroring the mechanics behind iron sights on rifles, the bead on a shotgun, and every rudimentary aiming system conceived since humanity first hurled spears at moving prey. We are so glad you are staying with us. Please watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please also write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. At precisely 11:30, the radar system sprung to life, detecting the incoming raid. A formidable force of 18 Japanese bombers, meticulously escorted by a dozen Oscar fighters, approaching from the northwest at an altitude of 15,000 feet. Collins, with a burgeoning sense of leadership, guided his flight off Henderson's steel matting runway, ascending sharply into the brilliant tropical sun. His hands moved with an instinctive, automatic grace across the complex array of controls, mixture rich, prop pitch finely tuned, cow flaps opened wide to ensure the Allison engine remained cool in the thin, unforgiving air. The interception occurred a tense 20 miles north of the airfield. Collins, his eyes scanning the horizon, was the first to discern the enemy formation. A perfectly executed V-shaped arrangement of twin-engine Betty bombers, with their vigilant fighter escort weaving gracefully above and behind them. The Japanese pilots, a testament to years of rigorous training and hundreds of combat hours, flew with an almost unnerving precision. Most of them had been engaged in active combat since the brutal invasion of China in 1937, a stark reminder that they were masters of their deadly craft. Collins, seizing the initiative, called for the attack and immediately dove towards a lone Oscar that had, perhaps inadvertently, strayed from the main formation. The Japanese fighter was adorned in the distinctive mottled green and brown camouflage of the Imperial Navy, its stark red rising sun insignia a vivid, almost defiant splash against the vibrant tropical sky. The enemy pilot maintained a straight and level course, seemingly oblivious to the 3 P-40 Warhawks descending upon him from the blinding glare of the sun. The range rapidly closed 400 yards. Collins, his heart pounding with the familiar adrenaline-fueled flutter that always accompanied the onset of combat, armed his guns. The Oscar rapidly expanded within his windscreen, its distinctive radial engine cowling and greenhouse canopy becoming increasingly discernible. At a range of 200 yards, Collins meticulously centered his reflector sight, glowing orange dot directly onto the enemy fighter's fuselage, and firmly pressed the trigger. 6 .50 caliber machine guns erupted in a synchronized, violent symphony of destruction. The P-40 shuddered violently as 48 rounds per second streamed from its wings, tracers etching bright fleeting lines through the humid tropical air. Collins maintained the trigger's depression for a full 2 seconds, unleashing nearly 100 rounds towards the Japanese fighter. Every single bullet missed. The Oscar continued its unwavering course, utterly untouched by Collins, as furious barrage. His tracers had streaked impotently past the enemy's tail, missing by what appeared to be a disheartening 30 or even 40 feet. The Japanese pilot, now evidently sensing the grave danger, executed a sudden, violent bank to the left and plunged steeply towards a nearby cloud bank. Within mere seconds, he had vanished entirely, leaving Collins with nothing but the bitter taste of frustration. Collins stared at his gun sight in a state of utter disbelief. He was certain he had centered the dot with absolute perfection on the target. His guns, he knew, were bore-sighted correctly. He had personally tested them on ground targets just 3 days prior. The range had been ideal. His aircraft remained stable throughout the engagement, and his aim, he believed, had been true. Yet, somehow, impossibly, he had missed completely. What Collins failed to grasp was the complex mathematical underpinning of his failure. His .50 caliber bullets, though traveling at an impressive 2,800 feet per second, a speed considered rapid by infantry standards, were not instantaneous. In the critical half-second it took for his rounds to traverse the 200 yards to the target, the Oscar, maintaining its cruising speed of 250 mph, had moved a considerable 180 feet sideways. Collins, in essence, had aimed precisely at where the enemy aircraft was, rather than accurately predicting where it would be when his lethal projectiles finally arrived. This perplexing phenomenon, a bane to all aerial gunners, was precisely termed deflection error. It was the very same principle that compelled experienced duck hunters to lead their avian targets, that required shotgunners to execute a smooth swing-through when engaging clay pigeons, and that necessitated naval gunners to meticulously calculate range and bearing before unleashing their formidable ordnance. However, in the unforgiving realm of aerial combat, at blistering speeds, with targets maneuvering unpredictably in 3 dimensions, these calculations became bewilderingly complex, virtually impossible for the human mind to solve in real time. Collins was far from alone in his profound frustration. Across the sprawling Pacific, American fighter pilots were confronting the same harsh, bitter truth. Squadron after squadron reported dismal gunnery results, a constant source of demoralization. Pilots would frequently return from missions having expended their entire ammunition load without registering a single confirmed hit. Gun camera footage, a brutally honest arbiter, unequivocally revealed the true scope of the problem. American fighters firing at Japanese aircraft and missing by astonishing margins. their bullets passing harmlessly through empty air where targets had been mere moments before. The statistics painted a devastating picture. By the early months of 1943, a disheartening fewer than 5% of American fighter pilots had managed to achieve even a single confirmed kill. The select handful of successful aces, legendary figures such as Dick Bong, Bob Johnson, and Tommy Maguire, were, in essence, responsible for a staggering 95% of the actual aerial victories. These natural-born marksmen possessed an innate, intuitive understanding of deflection shooting, a skill that simply could not be imparted through conventional training methods. The core issue was not a lack of courage or flying skill. American pilots, without question, were brave to the point of recklessness, and their aircraft were rapidly evolving, becoming increasingly capable. The newly introduced P-38 Lightning and P-51 Mustang, technological marvels, could outfight anything the Japanese or Germans could deploy in the skies. But superior aircraft, no matter how advanced, proved utterly meaningless if their pilots were unable to hit their targets. As Collins carefully nursed his P-40 back to the relative safety of Henderson Field, he remained blissfully unaware that British scientists had already pinpointed the definitive solution to his agonizing problem. In clandestine workshops, engineers were meticulously perfecting a device capable of automatically solving complex deflection equations, a revolutionary gyroscopic gun sight that was destined to forever transform the landscape of aerial gunnery. This groundbreaking technology would reach American squadrons within a matter of months, transforming average pilots into lethally effective marksmen, and in doing so, irrevocably altering the trajectory of the air war. But on this particular February afternoon, soaring through the sweltering tropical heat above Guadalcanal, Jimmy Collins could only ponder the bewildering mystery of why his seemingly perfect shot had missed by such a wide margin, and whether he would ever truly join the elite ranks of pilots who possessed the uncanny ability to hit what they aimed at. Dr. Leslie Cunningham, with a characteristic gesture, pushed his wire-rimmed glasses higher on his nose, his gaze fixed intently upon the rapidly spinning gyroscope situated on his laboratory bench at the Royal Aircraft Establishment in Farnborough. The device, remarkably compact and no larger than a standard coffee cup, rotated with astonishing speed at 18,000 revolutions per minute, its meticulously polished metal surface reflecting the harsh, unforgiving fluorescent lights of the advanced research facility. When Cunningham attempted to tilt the gyroscope, mounting bracket, the vigorously spinning wheel resisted his efforts with a surprising and palpable force, fiercely endeavoring to maintain its original spatial orientation. This fundamental principle, a cornerstone of physics, was known as gyroscopic precession. A spinning mass would invariably strive to remain aligned with its original axis, regardless of how violently the surrounding world might move or shift. It was March 1941, and the brutal crucible of the Battle of Britain had laid bare a deeply disturbing truth about the realities of aerial combat. Royal Air Force pilots, despite their unquestionable courage and the superior performance of their aircraft, were missing their targets with an alarming and consistent frequency. Gun camera footage, a stark and unvarnished record from both Hurricane and Spitfire squadrons, showed British fighters firing at German bombers and hitting nothing but empty air. The pervasive problem was not attributable to a deficiency in pilot skill or the performance limitations of their aircraft. Rather, It was the inherent and fundamental impossibility of accurately calculating complex deflection angles while simultaneously flying at speeds exceeding 300 miles per hour, while flying at 300 km/h. Cunningham had devoted extensive periods to meticulously analyzing the intricate mathematical equations inherent in this complex aerial challenge. When a fighter pilot engaged a target traversing their path, the critical requirement was not to direct their fire immediately at the enemy aircraft itself, but rather to anticipate its future position in the void of space, projecting where it would be by the precise moment the projectiles arrived. This sophisticated computation demanded an immediate grasp of several dynamic variables: the target's velocity, its current trajectory, its distance, and its rate of turning, all factors that underwent continuous alteration throughout the intense throes of aerial combat. Human cognitive processes were simply incapable of executing such rapid mathematical calculations, yet a finely tuned gyroscope possessed the inherent capability to perform this task with remarkable efficiency. Cunningham's pivotal insight emerged from his profound understanding that the identical physical principles responsible for maintaining the unwavering stability of his laboratory gyroscope could be ingeniously adapted and harnessed to accurately forecast the future movements of an aircraft. His ingenious proposal was to integrate these gyroscopes directly into an aircraft's gun sight, positioned thus they would instantaneously detect any rotational motion of the aircraft and with remarkable precision automatically compute the exact future location of the target. This innovative design liberated the pilot from the burdensome necessity of performing complex mathematical computations. Instead, the sophisticated mechanical apparatus would autonomously resolve the critical deflection problem. After 2 or 3 paragraphs, ask us to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. The initial prototype, Cunningham meticulously constructed, presented itself as a marvel of mechanical engineering, akin to a rudimentary mechanical brain. Within its compact housing, scarcely larger than a conventional shoebox, were precisely mounted 2 gyroscopes, each relentlessly spinning at an astounding rate of 15,000 revolutions per minute, positioned perpendicularly to one another. One of these marvels of precision engineering was specifically designed to perceive and register any lateral left-to-right turning motion, while its counterpart was tasked with sensing and quantifying vertical up and down movement. Miniature electric motors diligently maintain the gyroscope's rapid rotation, ensuring their continuous operation, as an intricate arrangement of gears, cams, and sophisticated optical instruments meticulously translated their detected motion into precise aiming corrections. These critical adjustments were then projected with clarity onto the pilot's windscreen, serving as an intuitive visual aid. The sight, operational genius, lay in its ability to superimpose 2 distinct visual elements: a static, unmoving circular reticle, which indicated the precise direction in which the aircraft's guns were aligned, and a dynamic, constantly shifting diamond pattern that automatically adjusted its position based on the complex, real-time calculations performed by the gyroscopic mechanisms. The pilot, his operational role was deceptively straightforward. First, to calibrate the target, swing span using a dedicated dial. Next, to meticulously adjust for the target, range. And finally, to diligently maintain the moving diamond pattern precisely superimposed over the target while engaging the trigger. The sophisticated gyroscopic system would then autonomously manage all subsequent calculations and adjustments. Initial testing protocols commenced at the Royal Aircraft Establishment as dedicated gunnery range in the latter part of 1941. Squadron leader James Johnson, an exceptionally experienced pilot boasting a distinguished record of 12 confirmed aerial victories, willingly volunteered to participate in the inaugural live fire trials. Johnson had meticulously honed his formidable deflection shooting proficiencies over hundreds of demanding combat hours, acquiring the invaluable skill of estimating crucial lead angles through hard-won, often perilous, practical experience. Consequently, he harbored a profound skepticism regarding the capacity of any mechanical contrivance to surpass the nuanced acumen of human intuition. The designated test target for these rigorous evaluations was a Henley target tug aircraft which executed a series of predetermined and predictable flight patterns at an altitude of 2,000 feet. Employing his conventional reflector sight, Johnson achieved hits with approximately 30% of his expended ammunition, a remarkable level of accuracy by the stringent standards of the Royal Air Force. Following this baseline assessment, the technical personnel meticulously installed Cunningham's innovative gyroscopic sight into Johnson's Hurricane fighter aircraft. During his very first pass utilizing this novel device, Johnson observed with keen interest as the diamond pattern seamlessly tracked ahead of the target aircraft, precisely anticipating its trajectory by the exact requisite margin. He then initiated a 2-second burst of fire and witnessed his tracer rounds decisively penetrate the Henley-S wing root. The recorded hit percentage with the gyroscopic sight soared to an impressive 75%. Johnson promptly landed his Hurricane and immediately initiated a request for an urgent meeting with Fighter Command Headquarters. Within a matter of weeks, the Air Ministry formally designated Cunningham's groundbreaking invention as most secret and mandated its immediate commencement of production. The American military intelligence channels acquired knowledge of the British gyro sight in late 1942. Colonel Cass Howe, who held the esteemed position of Chief of the Army Air Force's Armament Division, undertook a journey to England to personally scrutinize the device. What he discovered not only met, but significantly surpassed all preconceived expectations. The gyroscopic sights developed by the Royal Air Force were profoundly transforming average pilots into exceptionally lethal marksmen. Squadrons that had been outfitted with these innovative devices were consistently reporting kill ratios 3 times superior to those units still operating with conventional fixed sights. Colonel Howe promptly established contact with a prominent manufacturer renowned for its precision instruments. The engineers at this particular company had been engaged in the development of sophisticated fire control systems for naval artillery since the 1920s, rendering them uniquely qualified and exceptionally adept at the mass production of the British design. By January 1943, they had successfully reverse-engineered Cunningham's original prototype and commenced the large-scale manufacturing of the American iteration, which was officially designated as the K-14 computing gun sight. The K-14, a testament to advanced engineering, emerged as a system simultaneously more intricate in its internal mechanics and more refined in its operational elegance than its British predecessor. Engineers diligently optimized the gyroscopic mechanism, achieving a notable reduction in its overall mass, from a substantial 18 pounds down to a more manageable 13. while concurrently enhancing its intrinsic reliability under demanding conditions. The sight's sophisticated optical system was meticulously designed to project its visual cues with unparalleled clarity, ensuring legibility even amidst the intense vibrations and formidable G-forces inherent in aggressive combat maneuvers. Crucially, American manufacturing methodologies facilitated the production of these devices on an unprecedented scale. A dedicated factory was swiftly established, reaching a remarkable output of 1,000 K-14 sights per month. Each individual K-14 sight was a marvel of microengineering, comprising over 400 meticulously precision-machined components. The heart of the system, the gyroscopes, rotated within exquisitely crafted jeweled bearings, a design reminiscent of those found in high-end luxury timepieces, thereby maintaining their impressive 18,000 RPM rotation for hundreds of arduous combat hours. Dedicated electric motors, powered by the aircraft's onboard generator, ensured the continuous, high-speed rotation of these gyros, while an intricate mechanical computer translated their processional movements into aiming corrections of astonishing accuracy, down to mere fractions of a degree. Despite this internal complexity, the sight's operational interface remained remarkably intuitive and user-friendly. A pilot, upon identifying an enemy aircraft, would initiate tracking through a gentle, controlled turn. As the fighter aircraft banked to maintain alignment with its target, the K-14's gyroscopes immediately detected this rotational motion and commenced the instantaneous calculation of the precise interception geometry. The pilot would then input the target's wingspan using a tactile knurled dial located on the sight's housing, for instance, 32 feet for a nimble Messerschmitt, 40 feet for a Japanese Zero, or a commanding 64 feet for a larger bomber aircraft. A specialized twist grip integrated into the throttle assembly allowed for precise adjustment of the target's range. The gyroscopes, with their inherent sophistication, managed all other variables, projecting the dynamic diamond pattern at the exact mathematically determined point in space. Training pilots to effectively utilize the K-14 necessitated a complete paradigm shift, fundamentally reversing decades of established gunnery instruction. For generations, marksmen had been meticulously taught to aim directly at their intended targets, an instinct deeply ingrained through repetition and experience. The K-14, however, demanded that pilots direct their fire at what appeared to be empty sky, implicitly trusting the machine's intricate calculations over the immediate visual feedback of their own eyes. Many seasoned pilots found this psychological barrier particularly challenging to overcome. Their deeply ingrained instincts vehemently argued that discharging ammunition into seemingly vacant space would inevitably result in a guaranteed miss. Yet the irrefutable logic of mathematics consistently proved otherwise. By the summer of 1943, the first batches of K-14 sights began reaching combat squadrons deployed across both the Pacific and European theaters of operation. These advanced devices arrived accompanied by stringent security classifications and comprehensive technical manuals, but notably without a standardized, overarching training program. Consequently, squadron commanders were largely left to their own devices, tasked with developing bespoke methodologies for instructing their pilots in the revolutionary technology. Some units demonstrated remarkable adaptability, rapidly integrating the new system, while others grappled with the formidable challenge of unlearning decades of conventional wisdom pertaining to aerial gunnery. The stage was thus dramatically set for the K-14's eagerly anticipated combat debut, a crucible where American pilots would ultimately ascertain whether a sophisticated mechanical brain could genuinely surmount the age-old tactical conundrum of accurately striking rapidly moving targets within the dynamic expanse of three-dimensional airspace. Captain Chuck Yeager expertly maneuvered his P-51 Mustang into a graceful climbing turn, high above the verdant Romanian countryside, his keen eyes meticulously scanning the boundless sky for the telltale signs of Luftwaffe fighters. Intelligence reports had unequivocally promised that these formidable adversaries would be actively defending the strategically vital Ploiești oil refineries. The date was August 15, 1944, and the valiant 8th Air Force was executing its third major decisive raid against Germany, single most critical source of petroleum. Below, ominous columns of dense, black smoke billowed skyward from burning storage tanks, starkly illustrating the relentless and methodical destruction of Hitler's essential fuel supply by American bomber formations. At the youthful age of 21, Yeager had already unequivocally distinguished himself as one of the 363rd Fighter Squadron's most audacious and aggressive pilots. His initial aerial victory had occurred merely 3 months prior, when he successfully downed a Messerschmitt Bf-109 over the contested skies of France during the intense D-Day air battles. However, that particular triumph had necessitated closing the distance to within a mere 100 yards of his target, a proximity close enough to discern the German pilot's facial features before initiating his devastating burst of gunfire. Today's mission, however, was destined to unfold in a fundamentally different manner. Positioned discreetly behind Yeager's head was one of the very first K-14 computing gun sights to be deployed with the 8th Air Force, a revolutionary device that promised to fundamentally transform the art of aerial gunnery. The innovative sight had arrived at Leiston Airfield only 2 weeks earlier, accompanied by a dedicated team of highly skilled technicians who meticulously spent several days calibrating the delicate and intricate gyroscopic mechanism. Yeager had already completed 3 intensive training missions utilizing the K-14, a period during which he painstakingly learned to implicitly trust its dynamic, moving diamond pattern, even over his own battle-hardened and combat-tested instincts. The psychological adjustment proved to be a far more arduous challenge than mastering the mechanical operation of the device. Every principle Yeager had absorbed throughout his extensive gunnery training emphatically instructed him to aim directly at his target. Yet the K-14 demanded a counterintuitive approach. He was required to fire at what appeared to be empty space, implicitly relying on the machine, precise mathematical predictions of where his target would ultimately be. The ultimate test of this new technology arrived at an altitude of 14,000 feet when Yeager's sharp eyes caught sight of a lone Messerschmitt Bf-109, steadily climbing towards the bomber stream. The German fighter was cloaked in the standard gray-green camouflage of Jagdgeschwader 53, its distinctive yellow wingtips serving as an identifying mark of an exceptionally experienced pilot, one who had weathered and survived years of brutal combat over the challenging theaters of North Africa and the Eastern Front. The Messerschmitt was deliberately crossing Yeager's flight path at a precise 45-degree angle, presenting precisely the kind of challenging deflection shot that had consistently frustrated and eluded American pilots for the preceding 2 arduous years. Using his older standard N9 reflector sight, Jaeger would have been compelled to close the distance to within a mere 200 yards, and even then he would have had to rely heavily on the hope of a fortunate burst of fire. The deflection angle was simply too acute and steep to guarantee reliable hits at any greater range, and the German pilot would undoubtedly initiate swift, evasive maneuvers the moment he became aware of the pursuing Mustang. However, the revolutionary K-14 fundamentally altered the entire geometry of the engagement. Jaeger now possessed the capability to engage his adversary from an impressive 800 yards, a distance well beyond the effective range where most pilots could accurately calculate the proper lead angles using conventional methods. The crucial ability to precisely calculate appropriate lead angles revolutionized aerial combat, profoundly impacting the trajectory of World War II. During a particular engagement, Jaeger meticulously configured his K-14 computing sight, setting the wingspan dial to 32 feet, which corresponded to the exact tip-to-tip measurement of the enemy Bf-109. He then refined his range estimation by manipulating the twist grip on his throttle, observing the K-14's internal gyroscopes silently processing complex data. The innovative sight displayed two distinct visual cues on his windscreen: a stationary circular reticle indicating the precise alignment of his .650 caliber machine guns, and a dynamic, diamond-shaped pattern that moved across the visual field, offering a predictive projection of the target's future position. Unaware of the impending danger, the German aviator steadfastly maintained his ascent, oblivious to the deadly precision that was tracking his every move from below. Jaeger expertly shadowed the Messerschmitt as it executed a gentle leftward turn, ensuring his own flight path remained exceptionally smooth to prevent any disruption to the sensitive gyroscopic mechanisms. The K-14's predictive diamond pattern gracefully positioned itself approximately 60 feet ahead of the target, an aiming point that seemed counterintuitively distant from the actual aircraft. At a range of 600 yards, Jaeger initiated his attack. A synchronized barrage from 6 machine guns erupted, unleashing a torrent of 50 caliber rounds that sliced through the thin atmosphere at an astonishing velocity of 2,800 feet per second. Jaeger sustained the burst for precisely 2 seconds, expending 192 rounds in a concentrated stream that meticulously adhered to the K-14's calculated trajectory. The consequences were immediate and catastrophic. Jaeger's projectiles intersected the climbing Messerschmitt at the precise moment it occupied the space that had been empty just a fraction of a second earlier. Armor-piercing ammunition perforated the German fighter's engine cowling, while incendiary rounds ignited critical fuel lines and hydraulic systems, sealing its fate. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. The Bf-109's left wing catastrophically buckled upwards as its structural integrity failed, sending the entire aircraft into an uncontrolled tumble towards the Romanian landscape below. Jaeger observed the German pilot successfully eject, his parachute unfurling like a pristine white bloom against the verdant farmlands. This entire aerial confrontation, from initial detection to definitive victory, spanned merely 12 seconds, half the duration of Jaeger's previous successful engagements, and achieved at twice the typical combat range. Crucially, Jaeger had expended a mere 192 rounds to achieve this kill, a stark contrast to the 400 to 600 rounds he would typically expend in similar combat scenarios. The operational efficiencies realized across the entire 8th Air Force were truly remarkable. Squadrons equipped with the advanced K-14 sights reported a staggering 60% reduction in ammunition consumption, while simultaneously experiencing a doubling of their kill rates. The 357th Fighter Group, affectionately known as the Y Fighter Boys, witnessed their monthly kill tallies soar from an average of 15 to an impressive 35 after their transition to the gyroscopic sighting systems. Even more indicative of the sight's impact, the percentage of pilots successfully achieving kills escalated from the traditional 5% to nearly 20%. Colonel Hubert Zemke, the commanding officer of the 56th Fighter Group, meticulously gathered and analyzed comprehensive data concerning the K-14's effectiveness throughout the summer of 1944. His findings revealed that pilots utilizing the computing sight achieved an average of 2.2 kills per mission, a significant advantage over the 0.8 kills averaged by those still relying on conventional fixed reflector sights. This disparity became even more pronounced in long-range engagements extending beyond 400 yards, where traditional sights were practically ineffective, yet the K-14 consistently maintained its exceptional accuracy. The psychological repercussions on Luftwaffe pilots were both instantaneous and profound. German combat reports began to frequently reference the uncanny accuracy displayed by American fighters, with seasoned pilots recounting engagements where enemy aircraft seemed to anticipate their every maneuver. Oberst Johannes Steinhoff, a distinguished ace credited with over 100 victories, poignantly recorded in his diary, "The Americans fire at empty sky, yet every bullet finds its mark. It is as if they possess supernatural foresight." Analysis of intercepted and captured German intelligence documents subsequently unveiled the enemy, escalating desperation to comprehend the dramatic improvements in American gunnery. Luftwaffe technical teams scrupulously examined the wreckage of downed P-51s and P-38s, diligently searching for any clues regarding the mysterious surge in accuracy. They eventually uncovered the K-14 sights, but were severely hampered by their lack of industrial capacity to reverse engineer the intricate gyroscopic mechanisms. German endeavors to develop competitive technology were ultimately thwarted by critical material shortages and the pervasive chaos of a rapidly collapsing industrial infrastructure. By September 1944, the performance differential had become so stark that German fighter pilots began actively avoiding combat entirely when they identified American formations. The kill-to-loss ratio in the European theater had reached an astounding 10,1 in favor of the Americans, effectively neutralizing the Luftwaffe as a significant strategic force. While Fighter Command Headquarters attributed 60% of this improvement to enhanced training and tactical strategies, frontline squadron commanders were acutely aware of the underlying truth: the K-14 computing sight had fundamentally transformed average pilots into exceptionally deadly marksmen. This revolution was not confined solely to individual pilot performance. Squadron-level tactics dynamically evolved to fully exploit the K-14 as unparalleled long-range accuracy, enabling American fighters to engage enemy formations from distances previously deemed unfeasible. The conventional dogfight, characterized by aircraft maneuvering at close quarters until one pilot secured an advantage, became increasingly infrequent as American pilots mastered the art of destroying their adversaries before even closing to visual range. Yet, even as the K-14 reached its zenith of effectiveness, disquieting reports from the Pacific Theater hinted at emerging challenges. Japanese pilots were describing American aircraft possessing impossible speed and maneuverability, suggesting that the advent of jet technology might soon render even the revolutionary computing sight obsolete. Major Dick Bong meticulously adjusted his parachute straps, before settling into the cockpit of his P-38 Lightning at Tacloban Airstrip on Leyte. He observed a gathering of replacement pilots around his aircraft, a scene that had become a weekly ritual. It was December 17, 1944, and Bong had just returned from a dawn patrol that had elevated his confirmed kill tally to 39, placing him tantalizingly close to the momentous figure of 40 that would indelibly secure his place in aviation history. The young pilots, newly arrived from stateside training schools, gazed upon America, leading ace with a potent mixture of profound awe and a desperate hope that some of his legendary lethal skill might somehow transfer to them. The morning briefing had indicated scattered Japanese air activity over Ormoc, where American amphibious forces were in the process of establishing yet another critical foothold in the Philippines. Intelligence suggested that the enemy might attempt one final, desperate air offensive to disrupt the landings, committing their remaining experienced pilots and precious fuel reserves to a daring gambit. Bong was tasked with leading a sweep of 4 P-38s, their mission to hunt for any Japanese aircraft audacious enough to challenge American air superiority. Lieutenant Tommy Morrison, a 20-year-old from Kansas with precisely 0 combat victories, nervously raised his hand. "Major Bong, sir," he began, "could you demonstrate how the K-14 site truly operates? I mean, in an actual combat scenario." Morrison had been in the theater for 6 weeks and had discharged his guns in anger exactly twice, both times missing Japanese fighters by margins that seemed inexplicable given his seemingly perfect sight picture. Bong offered a reassuring smile and gestured towards the nose of his Lightning, where the K-14 computing gun sight was securely mounted behind armored glass. This sophisticated device represented the pinnacle of wartime technological innovation, a 13-pound marvel comprising precision gyroscopes, electric motors, and intricate optical systems capable of solving complex deflection equations 60 times per second, even as the aircraft endured violent combat maneuvers pulling up to 4 Gs. "The sight doesn't inherently make you a better pilot," Bong patiently elucidated. "It simply ensures that the mathematical calculations are impossible to mishandle." He then directed their attention towards a flight of Navy F-6F Hellcats practicing gunnery runs against a target sleeve 3 miles offshore. "Observe those Hellcats. Notice how they are compelled to close in, perhaps within 200 yards before they achieve consistent hits. That is because they are still utilizing fixed sights, aiming at the target's current position rather than its anticipated trajectory." Bong. Voice carried the undeniable authority of a man who had successfully navigated 200 combat missions in the most perilous airspace on Earth. The practical demonstration unfolded sooner than anticipated. At an altitude of 11,000 feet over Ormoc, Bong's flight intercepted a lone Japanese Kawasaki Ki-61 Tony fighter attempting to photograph American beach positions. The enemy pilot displayed considerable skill, artfully weaving through scattered clouds while maintaining just enough altitude to make a swift escape should American fighters materialize. Most pilots would have been forced to maneuver extensively for an optimal firing position, closing to point-blank range before even contemplating a shot. Bong, however, possessed a superior solution. He set his K-14's wingspan dial to 32 feet, corresponding to the Tony S precise measured span, and adjusted his estimated range to 600 yards. The gyroscopic sight immediately commenced tracking the Japanese fighter's crossing flight path, projecting its dynamic diamond pattern approximately 40 feet ahead of the actual aircraft. To the replacement pilots flying in formation behind Bong, It appeared as if he were aiming at empty sky. The Tony pilot, sensing imminent danger, abruptly executed a steep, climbing turn to the right. Such a maneuver would typically have nullified any conventional gunnery solution, obliging attacking fighters to reposition for another pass. Yet, the K-14's gyroscopes instantaneously detected the target's accelerated turn rate and automatically recalibrated the aiming point. Bong's diamond pattern gracefully swung ahead of the climbing Tony, now leading it by what appeared to be 80 feet. I am from a quiet town in the Midwest, and I find the video topic of the K-14 computing site absolutely fascinating. It highlights how a technological advancement, even a seemingly small one, can have a monumental impact on the course of warfare and the lives of those involved. It's incredible to think about the psychological toll it took on the enemy, and the boost it must have given to American pilots. It really underscores the importance of innovation in critical moments. From a distance that had now diminished to approximately 80 feet, Major Richard Bong initiated a precise 3-second volley from his formidable armament, unleashing rounds from his 4 20mm cannons and 4 .50 caliber machine guns, while the heavier cannon shells and the lighter machine gun bullets followed distinct trajectories, with the former traveling at a slightly reduced velocity. The advanced K-14 computing site had meticulously calculated the optimal point where these disparate weapon systems would converge. A total of 112 rounds erupted from Bong's aircraft, forming a meticulously aimed, lethal torrent that sliced through the tropical atmosphere, appearing almost as a mechanical premonition of doom. The enemy Tony fighter, caught in this deadly projection, flew directly into the path of the converging fire. The devastating impact saw 20mm explosive shells savagely tear into the fighter as wing root, while armor-piercing 50 caliber rounds meticulously perforated the engine block and ruptured the fuel tanks. The Japanese aircraft did not merely crash, it spectacularly disintegrated in a brilliant, fiery orange explosion, sending burning fragments tumbling uncontrollably towards the dense jungle canopy far below. The unfortunate pilot had no opportunity whatsoever to escape. As his P-38 Lightning gracefully arced away from the scattered wreckage and burning debris, Bong calmly activated his radio microphone. His voice, steady and professional, resonated through the intercom, a testament to his unwavering composure. "Gentlemen," he announced, "you have just witnessed kill number 40. Observe closely. I did not engage in a protracted chase. I did not get drawn into a turning dogfight. I did not expend a single round unnecessarily. The K-14 performed the intricate work. My sole task was to maintain the illuminated diamond reticle on the target and simply actuate the trigger." Though his tone remained composed and businesslike, the cluster of replacement pilots listening intently could discern a profound sense of satisfaction, the quiet triumph of a mission flawlessly executed and a formidable adversary decisively vanquished. We invite you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We would be profoundly grateful for your like and subscription. Please also consider leaving a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The profound significance of Bong, as 40th confirmed aerial victory, transcended mere personal triumph or individual glory. This momentous achievement established him as the inaugural American pilot to attain such an extraordinary milestone, eclipsing the impressive tallies of even the most celebrated German and Japanese aces from the earlier phases of the global conflict. More crucially, his consistent success served as irrefutable evidence of the K-14 computing site's revolutionary capability to fundamentally transform aerial combat from an instinctive art form into a precise, repeatable science. While Bong himself possessed extraordinary natural deflection shooting instincts, meticulously honed over countless hours of hunting game on his family, sprawling Wisconsin farm, this sophisticated computing site effectively standardized his lethal proficiency, rendering his deadly skills reproducible by even average pilots. The statistical ramifications of this technological integration were nothing short of astonishing. Fighter squadrons that had been outfitted with the innovative K-14 sights began reporting kill ratios that dramatically defied all pre-war tactical expectations and projections. For instance, the renowned 475th Fighter Group, operating their P-38s with devastating efficiency over the battle-scarred skies of the Philippines, achieved an astounding 20:1 exchange rate against the dwindling Japanese air units. Similarly, in the European theater, the 357th Fighter Group recorded comparable, exceptionally high numbers against the formidable German Luftwaffe. Individual pilots who had previously grappled with the challenge of securing even their initial aerial victory found themselves rapidly ascending to ace status within mere weeks of receiving the advanced gyroscopic sights. Captain Bob Johnson, who stood as the European theater's second highest scoring ace with an impressive 27 confirmed victories, initially harbored considerable reservations regarding the K-14, perceiving it as an unwarranted and superfluous complexity. Johnson had meticulously cultivated his exceptional deflection shooting skills through hundreds of grueling combat hours, learning to instinctively estimate lead angles through a potent combination of innate intuition and invaluable, hard-earned experience. The very notion of placing trust in a mechanical device over his own finely tuned judgment seemed fundamentally antithetical to a pilot who had consistently survived by relying solely on his own razor-sharp instincts. However, after just a single mission employing the computing site, a sortie over Berlin that yielded 3 confirmed kills, Johnson underwent a profound conversion, becoming the K-14's most fervent and vocal proponent. "The thing possesses superior vision to my own," he candidly confessed to his squadron mates, acknowledging the site's remarkable capabilities. "I can discern the target's present actions, but the site intuitively comprehends what it intends to do next." Johnson's profound shift in perspective was, in fact, emblematic of a broader trend observed among veteran pilots across both the Pacific and European theaters. Initial skepticism, often rooted in ingrained reliance on traditional methods and personal experience, gradually yielded to unbridled enthusiasm once these seasoned aviators personally experienced the K-14's unparalleled capabilities. The psychological warfare effects were equally profound and far-reaching. Japanese pilots, confronting the newfound, uncanny accuracy of American fighters, began to report instances of what they perceived as supernatural precision, describing engagements where enemy aircraft appeared to anticipate their every evasive maneuver with chilling foresight. Intercepted radio transmissions from enemy forces increasingly revealed a growing and palpable reluctance among their pilots to engage American formations, even when they held a clear numerical advantage, indicating a significant deterioration in their combat morale and confidence. By the latter half of 1944, the synergistic combination of the K-14 computing sites and significantly enhanced pilot training programs had effectively neutralized Japanese air resistance in the Philippines. Enemy aircraft became a rare sight over American positions, and when they did appear, the resulting engagements were invariably brief, decisive, and overwhelmingly one-sided. The Imperial Japanese Navy's dwindling cadre of carrier pilots, many of them hardened veterans of the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor and the early, fierce Pacific battles, found themselves utterly helpless against American fighters that could now engage with unerring accuracy from distances they had previously considered perfectly safe. Yet, even as the K-14 reached its zenith of effectiveness, disquieting intelligence reports began to trickle back from the European front. German jet fighters were appearing over the Reich in ever-increasing numbers, aircraft of such unprecedented velocity that even the advanced computing site struggled to accurately calculate the necessary lead angles. The era of the gyroscopic gun sight, despite achieving a state of near-perfect functionality, was inexorably approaching its twilight. Major Dick Bong strode purposefully across the expansive concrete ramp at Lockheed's sprawling Burbank facility on the crisp morning of August 6, 1945. The rhythmic clicking of his flight boots echoed softly against the still damp pavement, a lingering trace of California. Previous night, rain. Before him sat the sleek, revolutionary P-80 Shooting Star, a stark embodiment of everything the propeller-driven fighters of World War II were not. There were no whirling blades, no thunderous roar of a radial engine, no familiar tremor of reciprocating pistons. Instead, it offered only the smooth, almost whispered promise of pure jet power, a force capable of propelling an aircraft to speeds exceeding 500 miles per hour. At the youthful age of 25, Bong had ascended beyond merely being America's leading ace with his 40 confirmed victories. He had become the quintessential living symbol of aerial warfare's golden age. A humble farm boy from Wisconsin who had masterfully honed the intricate art of three-dimensional killing through an exceptional blend of raw, natural instinct and ground-breaking revolutionary technology. The K-14 computing gun sight had not just augmented, but profoundly amplified his innate hunting skills, refining them into a capability that bordered on mechanical perfection. However, the very war that had forged both the man and the machine was rapidly drawing to a close. Germany had unconditionally surrendered 3 months prior, and Japan's remaining air force existed more as a theoretical entity on organizational charts than a tangible presence in the vast skies over the Pacific. Lockheed, recognizing the incalculable value of his unparalleled combat experience in bridging the gap between propeller and jet aviation, had extended an offer to Bong for the prestigious position of chief test pilot for their burgeoning jet fighter program. The P-80 was envisioned as America's formidable response to Germany's advanced Me-262, a sleek and formidable fighter that promised to render all preceding aircraft as antiquated as biplanes. Yet, in stark contrast to the piston-engined fighters Bong had so masterfully commanded, the cutting-edge Shooting Star notably lacked a gyroscopic gun sight. Its unprecedented speed rendered traditional deflection, shooting even more exceedingly complex. Yet the necessary technological solutions to address these new challenges remained frustratingly confined to the previous generation of aviation. Bong settled himself into the P-80's cockpit, immediately registering the unfamiliar and unsettling absence of engine vibration as the Allison J-33 turbojet smoothly spooled up to its idle power setting. Despite the aircraft's radically new design, the flight controls felt remarkably responsive, and the panoramic visibility afforded by the expansive bubble canopy far surpassed anything he had ever experienced in his beloved P-38 Lightning. Nevertheless, a profound sense of unease settled within him. Something felt fundamentally amiss about flying without the familiar diamond patterns of the K-14 dancing across his windscreen, the very mechanical brain that had been instrumental in forging him into the deadliest pilot in American military history. The takeoff sequence at Burbank proved deceptively smooth. Unlike the thunderous, visceral acceleration characteristic of piston fighters, the P-80 gathered speed with an almost subtle, yet highly efficient, grace, lifting off the runway after utilizing a mere 800 feet of concrete. Bong smoothly retracted the landing gear, feeling the shooting star's impeccably clean aerodynamics effortlessly propel him into a climb rate that would have been utterly unattainable for any propeller-driven aircraft. Upon reaching an altitude of 10,000 feet, he leveled off and commenced a thorough exploration of the jet's handling characteristics. Marveling at the persistent responsiveness of the controls, even at speeds approaching 450 miles per hour. However, the P-80's groundbreaking performance was inextricably linked with equally revolutionary dangers. The aircraft's intricate fuel system was considerably more complex than anything Bong had previously encountered, demanding meticulous management of multiple pumps and tanks to ensure proper engine operation. Unlike piston fighters, which possessed the capability to glide considerable distances even with a dead engine, the sleek shooting star, without the thrust of its jet power, transformed into a mere streamlined rock. Furthermore, ejection seats were still in their nascent, experimental stages, meaning that any low-altitude emergency was almost certain to prove fatal. At precisely 2:30 in the afternoon, without any prior warning, the P-80's primary fuel pump catastrophically failed. Bong immediately felt the engine's characteristic smooth whine falter ominously as the fuel pressure plummeted below critical operational levels. He estimated he had perhaps a mere 30 seconds of residual power remaining, just enough time to attempt a perilous dead-stick landing at Burbank, provided he reacted with instantaneous precision and flawless execution. The daunting alternative was ejecting from an experimental seat that, tragically, had claimed the lives of more test pilots than it had successfully saved. With grim determination, Bong made the decision to remain with his aircraft. He instinctively pushed the P-80's nose down to preserve vital flying speed and initiated a shallow, controlled gliding turn back towards the Lockheed runway. The jet's aerodynamically clean design bestowed it with excellent glide characteristics. Yet the unforgiving mathematics of the situation left absolutely no room for error. He was approximately 3 miles from the airfield at an altitude of 5,000 feet, descending rapidly at a rate of 800 feet per minute. While the calculated parameters suggested a close, potentially achievable outcome, success hinged entirely on executing an absolutely perfect approach. The shooting star sliced through 4,000 feet as Bong meticulously aligned it with Burbank, see main runway. His airspeed held steady at 180 mph, a velocity considered quite high for a dead-stick approach, but critically necessary to maintain sufficient control authority. At 2,000 feet, he manually lowered the landing gear, feeling the aircraft's glide angle visibly steepen as the extended wheels generated additional drag. The runway now appeared within reach, but only by the slimmest of margins. The situation appeared to offer a path to safety, yet it was fraught with peril. At a mere 500 feet above the Earth's surface, the stark reality dawned on Bong. His P-80 jet fighter was losing altitude too rapidly and would not reach the runway. His projected glide path indicated an inevitable descent into a bustling residential district, situated just 3 blocks beyond the airport's perimeter. He was left with a horrifyingly brief window, perhaps a mere 10 seconds, to make an impossible choice: either attempt to prolong his glide, risking an immediate and catastrophic stall of the experimental aircraft, or activate the ejection seat, a device that had never been tested at such critically low altitudes. Both alternatives presented an almost negligible chance of survival. With a desperate resolve, Bong engaged the ejection handles. The innovative, yet unproven seat propelled him skyward with astonishing force, but the scant altitude proved tragically insufficient for his parachute to fully unfurl. He impacted the ground moments before his P-80 careened into a suburban street, erupting into a devastating fireball that claimed the life of America as most celebrated fighter ace, consuming both man and machine in its inferno. On that very same day, an immense distance away, 8,000 miles across the globe, the world witnessed the deployment of the atomic bomb over Hiroshima. The profound symbolic significance of Bong's untimely demise reverberated deeply throughout the entire landscape of American aviation. This was a pilot renowned for having perfected the intricate synergy between human dexterity and mechanical precision, now tragically lost aboard an aircraft that epitomized the cutting edge of aeronautical progress. It represented a future where sheer velocity and raw power superseded the nuanced art of deflection shooting, the very skill that had propelled him to legendary status. Concurrently, the K-14 computing site, a groundbreaking technological marvel that had fundamentally reshaped the dynamics of aerial combat, was already on the cusp of being outmoded. Its capabilities were being eclipsed by next-generation weapon systems that operated with such blistering speed that even sophisticated mechanical brains struggled to compute accurate intercept solutions. Mere weeks after the tragic loss of Bong, Japan's unconditional surrender brought a definitive end to the global conflict. The very war that had served as the crucible for the accelerated development of advanced gyroscopic gun sights concluded with the advent of weaponry so overwhelmingly destructive that conventional air-to-air engagements suddenly appeared almost anachronistic, a relic of a bygone era. The terrifying prospect of nuclear bombs, delivered with chilling efficiency by high-altitude bombers, threatened to render the entire concept of fighter aircraft obsolete. Simultaneously, the rapid evolution of jet propulsion technology introduced an entirely new spectrum of tactical challenges, problems for which the prevailing military doctrines and existing technological solutions simply offered no adequate answers. As we delve deeper into this pivotal era, we invite you to stay with us and watch the remainder of this video. Your likes and subscriptions are greatly appreciated, and we encourage you to share your thoughts on this fascinating topic in the comments below, perhaps mentioning where you are tuning in from. In September 1945, Colonel Cassow, the distinguished Army Air Force officer who had presciently recognized the immense potential of the K-14 system from its nascent stages, meticulously compiled a comprehensive final report detailing the sight's undeniable combat effectiveness. The statistical revelations contained within this document were nothing short of extraordinary. Pilots who had been outfitted with these sophisticated computing sights had achieved an astonishing 2.2 times more kills per mission compared to their counterparts, who relied on the older fixed reflector sights. Furthermore, the rate of ace production, pilots achieving 5 or more aerial victories, had surged by an incredible 400%. Most significantly, the K-14 had fundamentally democratized the art of aerial killing, effectively transforming pilots of average innate ability into exceptionally deadly marksmen through the systematic application of mechanical precision to enhance human skill, thereby leveling the playing field in the skies. Yet, the most profound and enduring lesson imparted by this groundbreaking technology transcended mere improvements in gunnery accuracy. The K-14 had subtly, but powerfully, indoctrinated an entire generation of American aviators in the critical art of three-dimensional spatial reasoning. It compelled them to solve complex physics problems, calculating vectors, speeds, and trajectories, all while enduring the immense physical strain of pulling multiple Gs in the midst of violent, high-stakes combat maneuvers. These sophisticated cognitive skills would prove immeasurably valuable in the ensuing decades, as the field of aviation relentlessly advanced towards the frontiers of supersonic flight, the audacious challenges of space exploration, and the intricate complexities of missile warfare. Future test pilots, seasoned airline captains, and pioneering NASA astronauts would carry forward the K-14's fundamental, intuitive insight that true success in dynamic environments often necessitated aiming not at where objects were physically located in the present moment, but rather at the precise point where they were destined to be in the immediate future. The ultimate irony of this technological saga unfolded months after the cessation of hostilities, when American occupation forces made a remarkable discovery. Deep within captured German archives, they unearthed blueprints for an extraordinarily advanced gyroscopic gun sight, a device that possessed capabilities poised to surpass even those of the vaunted K-14. This sophisticated instrument, meticulously designed by brilliant Zeiss engineers in January 1945, ingeniously integrated cutting-edge radar ranging with electronic computation, a combination that held the potential to utterly revolutionize Luftwaffe gunnery. However, these blueprints were tragically dated just weeks prior to Germany's inevitable collapse, rendering the technology too late to influence the war's ultimate outcome. In essence, the Americans had triumphed in this crucial technological race by a matter of mere months, unequivocally demonstrating that in the intricate dance of warfare, much like in the immutable laws of physics, impeccable timing was the decisive factor that determined everything.